Well, hello everybody. Welcome to Reanimated. It's a springy sort of vibe out here, and we're going to I'm not sure what season this show's taking place in. People are wearing short sleeves, so probably hot summer in England.
I don't
Um,
know. Could it? It could be any time in England.
it could I think it yeah, I guess so. It's a mild sort of temperate island. Here we go. So we're talking today about Generation Z. My name is Stuart. You just heard H.A. Conrad. That was her.
Hello.
Hi. And we are back for more zombie stuff. We had a little bit of a break, but we're back. And so this is a show we've been talking about for a couple of years. We saw it show up. It's one of the most difficult shows to Google because the name of it is
I
Generation Z. And
know.
and as soon as you search up, as my children like to say, they searched it up. As soon as you search up Generation Z, you just get tons of Gen Z stuff. And that's actually, I mean, it's kind of what the show's about, but it's also just annoying. So it's a Ben Wheatley written and directed production, and then there's a huge cast. We haven't gotten to meet all of them yet. Some
No.
of them are quite recognizable, and there's a ton of crazy accents. I mean, that's sorry, not to say that they're crazy. They're just normal British accents. Some Scottish out there too, and the subtitles. I'm just gonna put this out front. The subtitles on Amazon Prime cannot keep track.
Oh, it's pretty funny. The subtitles are having some trouble with the British accents.
I had to turn them off because it was distracting me from what they were actually saying.
Especially between Steph and his father. That was like the funniest.
Steph and his
There,
father, even Finn, like she doesn't have a crazy accent, but her dad, or is that her dad? No, Kelly's dad also
yeah,
does
Kelly's
not
dead.
pronounce words. He like skips lots of words, and when he's speaking, the subtitles have no idea what to do with this. It must be all AI generated,
I
or
think they
just
must
somebody
be.
from like Alabama is trying to write them and has never heard somebody speaking in English or a different
I
accent.
was actually laughing out loud at some of the interpretations.
Some of I can't remember. I mean, I wrote one of them down. Oh, when Finn talks about Occam's razor,
Yep.
they transcribed it as Auckland.
Yep.
Auckland's
They
razor.
did. They did. And when Steph is talking with his dad and it really had a hard time with the upstairs part. It kept saying like austeres or collapse or like it was saying something. No, it kept saying obstacles. That's what it would say. That's what I
Yep.
wrote. So it's like
So
obstacles.
that's just aside from the enjoyment of the show. If you want to have a bit of a laugh,
Mhm.
watch it on Amazon Prime and watch this. Read those subtitles because they are redonkulous. Um, oh God, there was another one where she said we're sixth form or sixth formers, and I think it translated it into like we're sick people or something. Um, anyway, let's get to it. Anybody in the cast that you want to call out up
Well,
front?
Viola Predajon, who plays Finn, um, I think the cast is actually pretty good, and they're kind of fun together. And Bouquet Kumur is Kelly. Jay Lycurgo or Lycurgo is Charlie.
And this guy we saw recently in the Radleys. He was the
Yep,
love interest. It was
he's
the
the love
boyfriend.
interest. Yep.
Yeah.
And then Lewis Gribben is Steph, and I these are like the four kind of teenage main cast members, I would say.
Those
And
were our Generation Z people.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
But then you've got like a bunch of, it's the the other kind of I would say it's like three generations of cast members here,
Yeah.
though I would say the main focus is on our younger cast members as well as what I would say is our boomer cast members.
Oh, for sure, they're
Um,
boomers.
and those are pretty interesting. So, Anita Dobson is Janine, and she plays Kelly's grandmother, and she's a pretty well-known singer and like actor in the UK. I feel like I've seen her before, but I just don't. I was trying to place her, and I even looked it up, and I don't know that um maybe I saw her in Doctor Who. It feels like that.
Hmm.
In any case, she's really kind of terrifying. Um,
Huh.
and then and then there's also I would say Sue Johnston is Cecily, and Paul Bentel is Frank. And those kind of make up our, to me, those are like kind of the three big members of the Boomer co zombie cohort. Um, did you have thoughts on that? It's interesting. It's um, some of the commentary here is kind of interesting. I will also
Oh yeah.
say I was, just sort of the premise of the show is that some big viral or chemical something gets out, and there's an awful lot of like rest homes in this area.
Just two. It's just two.
It feels like more, but
But for it's the town is at what, 60,000 people. So honestly, I feel like that's okay. That's believable.
but in any case, it just brings this. It's got some interesting commentary in any case.
This
Um,
show, that's what I'm most excited about this show for, is to see what Ben Wheatley's trying to get at and the points he's making about like toxic masculinity as well as like generation struggle and boomers versus Gen Xers and with Gen Z thrown in there too. I think it's fascinating. It doesn't always make for the most compelling zombie show, but I think as metaphor it's going to be a lot of cool content.
Oh, and I did forget, sorry, Robert Lindsay, who plays Morgan, and he's a slightly different character because he's a little bit, kind of on his own, in terms of he's not like he hangs out with Finn, which is interesting, and he's just kind of like quietly raising, like growing cannabis and other things. So um, another main person, though he's a little bit of a loner by comparison to the other people. So. Um, but I
Yeah.
feel like I've seen him in a lot of like UK type things.
Yeah.
So,
I don't
um,
The woman that I recognized was Charlie's mom, who is played by, oh God, what was her name?
well, Charlie's mom is the actor.
Yeah.
The actor is Tania Miller.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I
Um,
didn't. Oh,
but
there she is
she's
right at the
in
bottom. Karen.
Karen.
She was on the Peripheral, the show on another Amazon show that was a adaptation of a William Gibson novel.
Hmm.
With Chloe Grace Moretz. I thought she was the big bad in that and pretty diabolical and a lot of fun. So it's crazy to watch her playing like this very different sort of character. Not crazy, but it's cool to see her playing a very different kind of character in this show.
Hmm. Um, I mean, it's a great cast. So overall, but I would say definitely a very UK based cast without question. Um, so this
Oh,
is
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So a lot, I would say a lot that are probably featured in more of those kinds of shows, though. Oh, yeah. So, um, and it feels like a UK show just in terms of how they have the plot unfold. The one piece that I did personally find a little bit frustrating, was just sort of the response to the threat and how people react to certain things, but we can talk about that. Because it was hard for me to figure out whether they were going for campy or something else, because sometimes it feels like it can't decide.
That's
Um,
that's fair. Yeah, the lighting doesn't help with the is this campy or not. Some of the scenes, like the scenes in London with I don't even know what that lady's name is, the Westminster lady who's like running the cleanup operation.
yeah, no, that's almost like an aside, but maybe she'll take more of a feature role.
But they haven't introduced her by
Huh?
name yet. I'm just like waiting for her somebody to say Madam Johnson. I don't know. That's always frustrating to me. But in
Yeah,
the scene where she's introduced, like the lighting is purple or
yeah,
green or something, and I'm like, this is a normal office. Who is sitting around in a purple lit office in like the
yeah.
government? But anyway.
It's a little weird.
So sometimes those decisions are just like, wait, is this like a USA Up All Night movie from 1998? What am I what am I looking at here?
No,
Uh,
and there's some of that going on in general. Like even there's, the party scene with the kids.
yeah.
Okay, it's a party scene and it's just some of the decisions. It's like, okay, are we doing camp? Are we doing real? Like, what is what's the point?
But what didn't you like about the party scene?
It's not that I didn't like it. It's like, you're kind of going through this whole thing. Okay, we're gonna one of the plot points is that they have like indoor fireworks, and I'm assuming they're trying to kind of give some kind of parallel between the kids at the party and the people at the old age home, just sort of the weird crowd, something or other, though they're obviously being motivated for different reasons. But it just was like, okay, is this supposed to be silly? Because like it's kind of odd how they juxtaposed both of those things, but. Um,
Yeah, and it was odd because they do that fireworks piece, ejecting all the kids from their house into the woods, which is where we know all the zombies are at this point, and then like
Nothing.
nothing comes of that. Yeah, so that was a
Yeah.
weird choice.
So I just wasn't,
Yeah.
I thought they were just trying to show, oh, here's a crowd of young people, here's a crowd of old people, but the old people are tearing everybody's throats out, right?
Yeah.
Like I did think there was going to be some like so where I thought it was going was I thought they were going to have these two groups kind of, you know, clash, but that's not what they did.
No, absolutely not.
Um,
Like they just kind of just dispersed and then wake up the next day. So I will say that kind of affects the pacing of the pilot. I will the pacing the pilot was a little bit of a drag. But by the second one, I was more into it because then I'm like invested in the characters more.
yeah. So
So
anyway, but
yeah, it was. We
I
can
guess
yeah.
I
Let's
guess we
talk.
could get into it since we've now like given away so much. But um, so I mean, like it's a standard setup. We have a military um transport, uh, obviously, you know, driving through England in the middle of the night, and there's an accident. It felt like I know, like, so this was a question, and I wrote a note because it seemed as if the tire of this thing was shot out
Yeah,
versus blew out, and so
there's a distinct sort of
right.
rifle sound, but it's like silenced, so it makes it
Right.
harder to tell.
Right. So I was sort of like, what would did I interpret that correctly? They haven't come back to that yet. So maybe that will be a plot point later on. And our poor hapless driver, we don't know what happens to him, but we have to assume he dies.
They say he dies on one of
Right.
the
Oh,
military
okay.
reports.
But the whatever he is transporting leaks out. And it seems to have pretty quick effect on these two boomer sweethearts that are meeting out in the middle of the night.
Patients 0 and
Yep.
0.1. Yeah.
Yep. So this is Cecily and Frank, and they're, you know, they're hanging out. We find out later that Cecily's been she's going to be going into hospice, so she must have something going on. And Frank is like trying to declare his love for her, but I think because they are British, they're having a hard time expressing themselves. So nothing really happens, or maybe they're about to, but suddenly they are overcome by whatever this leak is, and it's immediate.
You
Like,
just threw all of the British Isles under the bus for being unable to express themselves.
yes, I just did.
I mean, it's not untrue. And then there's a terrible
Apologies.
smell.
Apologies to any of our UK listeners, but it's often
The
a
way
plot
that,
point. It's
I mean,
often a plot point in UK
yeah,
shows where this is
okay.
like, you know, you create tension. I'm not saying there's anything bad about it. I was just, you know, this is
They
often a
seem pretty on the same page about being into each other by, not too far into the show. So I don't know. I think it was more that Cecily was like overcome by
what
yeah,
she.
this letter thing that she was dealing with. But then her reaction to the gas, I thought was pretty hilarious. She kind of reacts as if he had just beefed, and
Yes, he
she's
totally did, and she's just.
like, what is the? She uses an adjective. She's like, Frank, that's just horrific.
I think she said
That's
horrid or something.
horrid. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, but then they
Um,
cut away, so you don't get to see Frank apologize.
and say it wasn't him, right?
hmm
They are stumbling back to their rest home, and this is more like a kind of a, you know, it looks like they each have their own independent rooms. And we find out that Cecily's been sort of been offered or it's suggested that she should be accepted into this hospice program. I'm assuming that means she's going to leave there. And if she is in hospice, something else is probably happening. Um, we don't really see Frank. They're mainly focused on her,
Yeah,
and she's having a pretty rapid reaction to whatever this is, and eventually tears out the throat of the one of the caretakers at the home.
yeah.
In the meantime, we have the kids with their
The,
party, right?
well, there's a what's this is where I mean, maybe you're right to say there's too many retirement homes because they cut from Sunny Rise, which is 1 kilometer from the spill, to Golden Uplands, which is 6 kilometers from the spill. And this is where we have our first scene with Morgan and Finn. I do not like this scene. I don't feel like they introduced these characters well enough. We get the idea that Morgan is like a weird recluse who's a conspiracy theorist.
Mm.
We don't even know Finn's name until much later, but they're both so mean to each other. And then they kind of call each other out on being mean to each other, and then she leaves. I don't know. It's that scene really. First of all, we went from one retirement home to another, and then we had this scene between two people that was really unsympathetic. And yeah, so that scene I didn't like. Even though I like Finn a lot more in episode 2, and Morgan seems to be coming into his own too. I don't know. Did you have a reaction to that scene, or was that just me?
What between those two?
Yeah, that
Yeah, it
kind of.
sets up a relationship. It sets up,
But the
you know,
relation, what's the relation like that they're just jabbing at each other all the time and
well,
saying,
they're jabbing at each other, but they do care about each other. It's gonna come back to this. I think probably the reason Finn is so in tune with things that are happening is because she has this friendship with Morgan. We find out later she's an orphan, and that's a little bit about why she's on her own. And, I think even though they're giving jabs at each other, they are actually thinking about what the other person has said,
I don't know, it
is
felt to
saying.
me the way that it was written or performed, it felt less like this is friendly banter. It was more like, no wonder you don't have any friends. You're so mean all the time. And I forget what she says. You're just selling cut rate drugs to children to hang out with them, and that's weird. Like they say actually kind of nasty things to each other.
They do, but there is still, I mean, I don't know. I feel like there's an understanding between them because they're
Well,
both kind of
I
outcasts.
think that that's much more clear in their subsequent interactions
Yeah.
than in this introduction. I think they could have softened it a little bit. I mean, I'm getting real, nitpicky, but I think they could have softened some of that in this first
Oh,
part.
it was pretty ja no, agree. It was a little jarring. And I think the second interaction was better.
Yeah,
Um, but but it's part of this interaction between them, the things that she's giving to him and um,
and the
you
things that
know,
he's given to her, he gives her like magic truffles, which I've never heard of.
well, I mean, it's
Truffles are
just
so much harder to find than mushrooms. I don't. Why would you? Why
that,
would you take the time to make them,
yeah,
psychosomatic? No, that's not the right word. Psychedelic.
yeah.
But that's what he gives her for some clip off of YouTube that she's downloaded, and we get to see later, which is people attacking each other in another country. Do you remember where that was? Libya?
I think
Somewhere
so.
like that.
I don't know.
But we see her again very soon because she goes to this house party, which is where we meet Kelly and Charlie and Steph, who are the rest of our quartet of young heroes. Charlie and Kelly have history. That becomes clear pretty quickly at this party. They also have a insane height difference. I think I get the impression that Kelly is quite petite, whereas Charlie is like a 6 foot something kid.
Yeah, she is quite petite. But so is Finn. And then there's also the interaction between Finn and Steph, and apparently he's the guy she's kind of targeting, which is weird
Into
because he's just such a goofy, strange dude.
Yeah, the
I'm
actor apparently is on the spectrum, which I think is a very interesting part of the if once you read his bio, you're like, oh,
oh,
okay. Like his mom got him into acting to have more interactions with
oh,
other
so he's
kids.
he's neurodivergent. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Um, and he plays the role well. I mean, the
Yeah.
interactions between him and his father and him and the others is always kind of interesting. Um, so that's he's that is one thing though, and it gets a little bit better later on, but his interactions with Finn and also with Charlie and Kelly are just kind of odd. And he feels like he's playing a different game than them. And and maybe that's the angle here, which is okay. But he like even when Finn is interacting with them, it feels like they're not entirely connecting. And she's kind of doing the same thing she was doing with Morgan, is like jabbing at him too, but he just doesn't register that. And then he also within the same party is talking to Charlie, and Charlie's like, "Oh, you should go for Finn," and he's like, "Oh no, I'm gonna go for Kelly." Like it's just like an odd thing. Like, why would you say that to the dude who used to date her? I don't know.
Again, that's because Steph does not think like other
I know.
people.
I know. Anyway, it's kind of funny as a setup, and I do think it sets it up well for the interactions that happen later.
Hmm.
So yeah. Um, and
Then
then
pretty quickly they set off these fireworks, which turn out to be not indoor fireworks,
yeah, I've
and the
never
party
heard of
ends.
for fireworks personally, but
No,
yeah.
no. So yeah, like these introductions all happen. We also find out that Charlie needs to check on his mother because he is concerned about her boyfriend. Kelly gives him a hard time about that, but yeah, I don't know. I didn't love. Yeah, I guess I didn't love the party scene either because it feels there like the climax doesn't happen, I guess, or like there's no, it just kind of peters out or fireworks out, I guess, and then they all run out into the woods and then they just kind of wake up the next day.
Yep.
But also we've seen now scenes of Sunny Rise and the military showing up there, so that's a pretty quick reaction time. Same night as the zombie outbreak begins, the military has teams in place in hazmat suits
Yeah.
from a
But
genre
also,
perspective.
and then there's also, I don't know if this, I'm not sure of the timing of this, but the woman who we don't know is named, like
Yeah,
who's supposed to go in and check all of this out. And
yeah,
to me, it's pretty clear that the dude is sending her into like a bad situation and knows it. And she knows it too. And she keeps asking questions that he does not want to answer about this spill and what was on the truck.
yeah,
Um, and she looks at him, and it's just like this very weird thing. And even when you see the people in hazmat suits, they're in there and they're going through this rest home, and there's like intestines everywhere, and like,
yeah.
we've got some residents missing. I will say their tracking is not so great if they can't find this giant group of boomers running around the woods.
No, I mean they're just, yeah, they're mostly just doing a search by helicopter,
Yeah.
which I feel like, yeah, you're not going to be able to see through the canopy even with infrared. So you got to get in there, unfortunately. That's just what it is. They talk about there being 15 missing residents of Sunny Rise. They've killed 6 staff and they found 35 other residents. I don't know. They don't say if they're infected or not, but I don't think we ever get an answer to that. So there's 15 zombies in Danbury, and that's just day one. And honestly, by the end of what we had the show, the second episode ends. I think it's still day 3 or maybe day 4. Does that strike you
Yeah, I
correctly?
think it's day
Yeah.
3.
We have no idea how many zombies there are, but I get the impression that there are more now.
Yeah.
For sure,
And
there's definitely other people who've been infected. Yeah.
well, and we're also seeing it sort of like indirectly through the videos that are coming up. So
Yeah,
Finn,
true.
so I think there are probably more than we're not. And we're just seeing this sort of little like corner, but it feels like there are a lot more. Like sort of the videos she was seeing before were not in the UK, they were in another country, and now they're in the UK and she's seeing a lot of them. Um, and so that's I think indicative of how quickly it's spreading, though it
Yeah.
isn't clear. I guess there's random residents from the rest home that aren't part of that big little herd. Oh,
Well,
sorry,
there's
the
that one guy with the beard who
yeah,
ends
he's
up
given
biting
a
Janine.
yeah, yeah. So there's
He's
him.
not he's just wandering around eating garbage.
Yeah,
Yeah, he seems to be the only zombie who's not part of that herd at first. But then I think it's in episode 2 we start seeing those videos from Finn. The next day happens suddenly. Like Steph and Kelly are wandering around together. I forget what they're even talking about. They're talking about Charlie and they're talking about their relationships. But he's not telling her that he's into her yet. And then that's like, all right, cut to daylight, and the old people are out in the forest looking at leaves and looking up at the sky, all in wonderment. And that's great. At home now, Steph is obsessing about Kelly. He's looking at her, I don't know, Instagram or something, and then he's watching TikTok videos by this guy called Clarence Chutt, I think is his name, talking about being a lobster and not a cuck, and to use the lobster claw to dominate women or to dominate maybe just anybody, because he only actually tries to use the lobster claw on his dad later, which
And
was
his dad's like, "What are you doing?"
what's wrong with your hand? He's like,
Your
nothing.
hand.
It's a claw. That was
I
honestly very funny. That was
It
really
was
good.
very funny. It was very funny. And the dad's just like, "Okay, I'm just gonna take this crossbow from you right now.
Yeah.
Just slowly pick up the crossbow." Like and there's also like, Steph is doing lots of things like this. Like he orders the crossbow and his dad is just like, "Yeah, that's not something we're gonna do here."
He also has
Uh,
nunchucks that he puts in his backpack at one point. Like
and
this,
he's got a lot of random weapons going on. So,
yeah. Um, so there's a lot of other scenes in this first episode that I'm okay with, but not 100%. We do get to meet Michael, who's Charlie's mom's boyfriend, Karen's boyfriend. And this guy is a real jerk. You can
mm,
pick up on that really quickly. Who's playing that guy? Do we
you know,
know?
I don't know, but he does play a like terrifying abusive jerk really well.
Robert
Also,
James Collier.
mhm,
Yeah, he's doing he's doing a great
a
job of
great
that.
job. And I have to say,
Oh
the
God, he was Thomas Barrow on Downton Abbey. He was a villain on
my gosh.
Downton
Okay,
Abbey.
okay, I know exactly who he is.
Yeah,
And the like I have to say Charlie and Jay Lysergo is really really good at his non-reactions to him because he knows that if he reacts too much he's
yeah.
just gonna set him off. So those are he does a really great job. But Rob James Collier plays an excellent jerk. He really does. He's just, you know, off making drug deals with children in the woods, which is strange.
That's so weird. That's his big score. Yeah, okay. So I don't know what episode is happening in, but when Charlie raises the question to his mother, why doesn't Michael have a job? The unemployment rate's only like 4%. I
I
thought
think
was,
that
and she's like, "What do you know?" And then she
yeah,
apparently immediately goes or
rat them
somehow
out.
tells Michael, and then Michael's like, "I'm banging your mom every day. How's that for? How do you like them apples?" Like it's just gross. They have
Yeah,
a
it's pretty gross. He's terrible. So,
It's
yeah.
really bad.
And
We
then
also,
his big score is like,
yeah,
ridiculous.
there's some questions I have about how that went. Maybe we'll find out more about it in flashbacks, but Kafir shows up without the drugs in the woods. He's like a 10-year-old, 12-year-old kid.
Yeah, he's super young. And
And he's
also,
like, somebody in the woods took my bag. And we don't know if it's the truth or what happened. And hopefully we'll find out more.
he seems very put upon. He's like, they took my bag. Um,
It's also not very emotive so
no.
far.
But I guess my bigger question is because Michael does not seem as if he's got his stuff together. I don't even know how he would sort of navigate anything like this. How did he even set it up in the first place? Kind of feels weird, but as
Yeah.
we
Like he
as
doesn't have, did he have money to give them for the drugs
right,
to begin with?
right. It
Because he
feels
only has 120 pounds later.
and they kind of laugh at him, and so it's just weird.
Yeah.
And
We've also met Kelly's parents and her grandmother Janine. Here, I think, is where some of the more interesting commentary is being
mm,
delivered, actually by Kelly's mom,
yep,
who doesn't like Janine, who is her mother-in-law.
yep.
Um, and yeah, she has a lot of like level stares at people, although she is very nice about giving everybody tea. She's like, "Hey, she voted for leave. Why doesn't she take a hint?"
Hmm.
I like that. She talks about how hard they have it versus Janine, who seems to be like, fairly wealthy. Janine's also giving Kelly all these like hotel shampoos, like it's a huge deal.
Yeah.
And she stole the towels, which I mean, she's gonna get charged for that.
Yes.
She better.
She better get charged for that. And it's weird because they're making a commentary. Kelly's mom and dad are talking about how poor they are, but how Janine's kind of throwing it in their faces. And we're like, I don't get the sense that anybody's super well off. And later we find out that Janine overextended herself on this vacation.
She
Um,
says that. I don't know that we have any.
but it's interesting because she's kind of saying stuff to Kelly like, "Oh, Kelly, you need to get out of here," but she's not exactly offering her any help.
That's true. He's giving
So
her free soap and shampoo.
she's giving her free soap and shampoo and advice, but nothing tangible.
And
So
she's also saying your parents don't understand that and they don't have what it takes.
right,
They're in the next room.
right. So there's a lot of tension there, and I mean, Kelly's mom is like, you know, we're living hand to mouth, and she's rubbing it in our faces every step of the way. Um, but the interesting thing, though, is that Kelly is also, I mean, Kelly is quite capable. She's managed to save all this money that we find out later, and she's also forced to act like the adult. And interestingly, Charlie said something to her like, they're supposed to be taking care of you. Like, you're not
Yeah.
supposed to be worried about them. But it's a situation where her parents are like, her dad's walking 2 hours every day to work because he can't fix the car. So there's all this tension between the different generations. But overall, a feeling like there is a lot of economic instability. And I feel this sort of throughout the show. Nobody is super well off. Definitely Charlie's family doesn't feel like they're like living the high life.
Well,
Morgan
yeah,
and
we don't
Finn,
even know if his mom is employed. I
right. And Morgan, I would imagine, is doing just fine given his thing. But Finn, we later find out, is living in like an orphanage, maybe?
She
Like
calls
that.
it like unaccompanied care or accompanied care shelter or something like
That's
that.
something
Like,
like that.
but that she has basically because she's 18, she can come and go as she pleases.
Right.
Uh,
So,
and then,
yeah,
but Steph's family, uh, they seem to be pretty together. Like his
well,
mom
they're
runs
just,
Sunnyrise. His
yeah.
dad also appears to have, I don't know if he has a job, but I don't know. I really like them. Honestly, I wasn't sure I was gonna like that scene when his dad walks in as like video games. These things are stupid, but then he picks up the controller and is like playing with Charlie and being nice to Charlie. I don't know. I thought his dad was awesome, actually.
Well, and I also think his dad is like trying to work with stuff. And later, I mean, he's pretty understanding with the crossbow. Like he's not happy about it, but
Yeah.
he's just trying to understand it.
Well,
And
he's
then
also giving him a hard time because he's like, what is the meaning of this? Like, you
yeah,
have to
no,
explain.
he is, but he's also trying to understand it. And he could have just not understood it. He could have acted like a jerk, um like Michael does to Charlie. And so but he doesn't do that. And so I thought that was, but he also is worried about his son and doesn't want him to hurt himself or anybody else. So he like takes the crossbow away. Not that that stops Steph from finding it. But I just thought that was kind of interesting.
Oh my God, this guy who's playing his dad is Duffy from Slow Horses, who is such an asshole. But
Oh,
he's
I thought
so nice on this show.
oh, he's good on this
There's
show.
like a lot of these people are like, wait, I know this person, but they
Yeah.
have also, they've changed their whole vibe. I don't know.
Yeah.
That was great. That's cool to realize that his name is Chris Riley.
Yeah, so we hear there's also a lot of commentary from Steph's mom about um I think they're talking about COVID and quarantine and things like that. So this is an underlying theme in the show too, where there's like a little hint about vaccines. There's also a hint of that, she's like, oh, we can't do this again, the quarantine thing.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of like underlying tension about things that have gone on before. But in the meantime, we're just sort of watching this virus low key like go through this community.
Yeah.
Um,
Because Janine gets bitten while she's taking
Yep.
out her trash by the weird bearded zombie uh, in the interim here. So yeah, we're seeing it spreading. We're seeing the old people wandering around in the woods, and Cecily and Frank have been separated. But these zombies are talking. That's
They're
important to point out.
talking and they're, the boomer zombies are like, we're powerful now, especially Cecily. She's definitely the ringleader. But it's interesting because the zombie that bites Janine doesn't really talk. And Janine, as she's infected, is very like clearly talking. There seems to be moments of lucidity and not. And there's this one point where there's like a flashback with Frank, and he's talking to Cecily, and he says something like, it's either I don't know, remember which one says it when they first are starting to kill people that they feel like they're three different people. So I think that's going to come back maybe. Like there's three different ways that they're feeling. maybe this is the virus, maybe it's something else. They also are imbued with super strength, so they're feeling really good. And Cecily is like, ah, everybody's going to try to take this from us. So they're going from being these mild-mannered, somewhat powerless, feeling powerless people in this rest home to, marauding about and coming up with ploys to kill wayward joggers and stuff.
Hmm.
Um, and
Yeah, uh, that's a good one.
again, I have to question the reality of a group of like 15 plus elderly folks, you know, hiding out in a barn and never being found. And they eventually are found, but it's interesting the reactions to the carnage. I mean, I understand Charlie and Steph from a disbelief, an initial disbelief point of view when they encounter um it, the random, it was Frank in the
It's
woods? Yeah.
Frank, yeah, but the reason why they don't understand how to process this is because they are high out
Yes,
of their
they
minds
are.
on
They
truffles.
are, but later when they're viewing the footage and whatever, it's like something else is going on here. It's
I don't
just
think they
it's a little
remember. Like
strange.
part of it is like Steph's reviewing that footage to be like, wait, this happened. Like later, when after that scene happens where they're just they're tripping and making a video about stick sizes, which was good.
Oh dear.
Yeah, a woman walking her dog happens upon Frank, who's prone on the pathway. I don't know if he was like laying a trap or just laying down, but he eats Muggsy the dog,
That
and
was
then
really disturbing.
very just he puts his hand right up its butt and out the other side. And then he bites Jane, the dog lady. We don't know her name at this point, but she's having very normal reactions to all this, like "get off of my dog" and hitting him. Uh, and then Charlie eventually like breaks through his psychedelia to kick Frank down a hill, and they all kind of run away. Well, Steph and Charlie run away because they are too high to deal with this, leaving Jane to be on the phone with the police. One of the other things that's interesting that's happening here is the lady from Westminster, whose name we don't know, has been talking to this Colonel Rollin about well, this happens throughout these two episodes. I don't know where it happens, but she's like, we're gonna like, inter we're gonna shut down the comms, but not like they're not saying nobody can make cell phone calls. But if somebody starts to say something that's about the outbreak, then we see this happen a little bit later. The phone call gets very distorted and then it drops. Um, and she's trying to seed more conspiracy theories into Danbury. So it's a pretty interesting and sophisticated approach to, keeping a lid on everything that's going on.
Yeah, except they're not doing a great job at it.
They're doing about as yeah, they're not getting those 15 zombies, which is the problem for sure. But I thought that her approach was if I was a bad guy working for the government, I might try to do the same thing if such a technology even existed where like this weird antenna can just like distort certain phone calls. I don't know that that exists.
Well, in any case, our intrepid heroes, aside from the dog walking woman, come face to face with the reality of this because, um, you know, Janine's been bitten, and I have to say, Janine is terrifying in her, like when the virus is overtaking her, the makeup's really good, but her acting is incredibly creepy and terrifying. Like, so I have to say, if I went over to a relative's house and they were acting like Janine was acting, I don't know that I'd be hanging out, um,
She's straight
waiting.
up eating with her hands that lasagna,
Yeah,
and Kelly's
yeah.
not looking at her for the longest time. And I'm like, Kelly, you need to see this, girl. This is messed
Yeah,
up.
it's really weird, this whole reaction. And this is a little bit of what I was saying. Like, this is one of my nits is that it doesn't feel like the characters are having reactions to things that make sense. So, and this is one of them. Because it's immediately strange. Like, even when Kelly walks up to the door and she's like scrabbling along the glass door and looking out at Kelly, hey, something's up with Grandma. We need to
Yeah.
maybe help her. Like, I don't think that this makes sense. Like, she calls Charlie for help, but wouldn't you call your parents? Right?
Yeah, I
Um,
guess she could, but
it's
I don't know how
weird.
far away
It's
they
weird.
are.
So that bothered me, and then obviously what happens next, and that's why this is where I felt a little like, what is this? show going for? Is this black comedy? Is this camp? Is it not? It feels like they really just can't decide. And so this is the big scene where that felt, I mean, the dog thing, yes, that was like, oh, is this what they're doing? It just felt very strange. Like the tone was uneven, the treatment was uneven in how they're dealing with it. And so we have these interactions where Kelly's essentially getting stalked by her grandmother and is like hiding, like kind of like it felt like it was like out of Jurassic Park with the kids hiding in the kitchen from a
Oh,
velociraptor.
for sure.
And Janine's like sniffing and acting like she's like this is and she's at this point not moving all that quickly. Kelly, I don't think I'm hiding in the kitchen. I'm getting out of that house.
Yeah, Kelly
Like,
does not get out of the house fast enough. And
and
Janine gets a knife. Like she's
right,
not
it's
your
not
average
good.
zombie, and she's talking. She's like, "Oh, I'm gonna come and eat you. I'm so hungry."
Yeah,
Luckily, Charlie, the phone call that dropped between Charlie and Kelly, he was sober enough at this point to be like, "That didn't sound right. I'm gonna go over there." And Steph is like, "I'll meet you outside," and grabs his nunchucks, but apparently also grabbed his crossbow because just as things are getting really bad, I'm wondering how they're doing all these. I mean, their stunt doubles are good. I will put it this way because some of these like old lady jumping through a window,
oh yeah.
they look pretty believable. So they're doing a good job with their stunt doubles, unless, Janine actually did jump through a window, which I'm hoping she did not. But Kelly does not escape from this unscathed. She gets sliced with the knife on one arm and then a big chunk of glass embedded in the other. And Charlie and Steph come in as Janine is still swiping at her with the knife. Oh, and Steph shoots her with a crossbow right in the chest. She goes down, looks dead as hell. And Kelly says, "What the f?" And then that's the end of episode one. I thought that was a pretty good way to end the episode. Both of these
It
episodes
was.
have a good ending, kind of one of those like,
Mm.
"What?"
Yeah.
Ah, they're good. Episode two, the government cannot keep up. Their emergency services are overwhelmed. Finn is watching social medias, and this is where she's seeing more videos of attacks happening, presumably around Danbury.
Well, and they also make a point that the government and the military are going in with non-lethal anything.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Although there's two interactions between soldiers and zombies in this episode. The first one they have those non less than lethal shotguns. The second one they have those are rifles firing that fire actual bullets. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure that was a little bit inconsistent and not a lot of time between those two scenes to suggest that there would have been a massive change in rules of engagement. Um, yeah, but so what's also interesting is Billy, who is almost certainly Charlie's sister.
Yep.
Charlie has a younger sister and an older sister.
Yep.
Billy has been name dropped in one of these episodes. It's actually in this one
I think it's in this.
because, yeah, Michael starts screaming at Karen, Charlie's mom, and Charlie uh, like goes to his little sister and tells her, it's gonna be okay. And she's like, I don't want you to leave me like Billy did and Dad. Uh, and what's interesting is we met Billy in the first scene of the movie, like, or the first scene of the show. She's the lady on the radio with the driver of the truck. And now she's showing up in subsequent scenes in her, like walking around in the forest with her partner Malcolm, as it turns out later. So I thought that was kind of cool that because we find out that her family's there. And, oh, yeah, it's all good.
Yeah. Also interesting though in that whole interaction. So they, get hoodwinked by a bunch of senior citizens and Malcolm gets infected.
It's just one, isn't it?
What?
When Billy and Malcolm happen upon one zombie in the woods.
Oh, yeah, yeah. They don't know that the others are in the woods. So that was at that point. But they get hoodwinked by him because he's faking. They're doing their same like play possum thing that they did with the runner that they had eaten earlier. But he gets infected in because Billy basically shoots him, but the blood gets in his mouth, I think.
Yeah, and
Um,
it's all over his face. Yeah,
it's all over it. And the interesting thing is sort of watching the progression of the virus. I kind of like, look, I'm interested to see how this happens because we've seen a little bit with the senior citizens. We see a little bit with Janine, and then with Malcolm, it's a little like this is somebody that hasn't been outright bitten. And he basically tells Billy, "Oh, don't tell anybody because I'm not going to go into that quarantine. I'll never come out." And like it's a little she's never encountered this, so maybe I'm going to give her a pass on that, but even as like his progression with this infection happens,
It goes so
it,
fast. To
it
be
goes
fair to her, it's not like she has a chance to be like, "Oh, dude, I think you're sick, and now we need to really take care of this." He is throwing up in that one scene, and she's like, "We need to take you to a hospital."
and then
But
suddenly it's all
but then
all in.
suddenly he's
Yeah.
killing people and eating them. Like
Yep.
it happens very, very quickly in her defense. I
No,
agree
no.
with you though that she should have been like, "Hell no, brother, you're going into
Yeah.
you've got to go into
Yeah.
quarantine."
But look, she's
But
never
yeah,
encountered it, so he has
yeah.
apparently, but she has never encountered this kind of an operation. So he's her best mate, as she says, and so she doesn't want to. And but it does get the catalyst is that, he even as he's like eating the other the guy who confronts him, um, he tells her to run home and get out.
Yeah,
And
I thought that was really
so I
interesting.
thought, so I found that to be interesting because,
Yeah.
this is a kind of the idea that yes, you're doing this, you're aware you're doing this, but you know that it's bad. And so he cares enough about her to tell her to get the heck out. And she does. I'm sure she'll run into the woods, and it seems, um, she encounters some even more disturbing things in the woods
Uh,
when she does this. Um,
I mean,
but
it doesn't look like they're that far away from town. I don't understand why she's running for this entire episode.
Yeah, no, agree. It felt, and also once again, the military can't find this like group of boomers having like orgies, like zombie orgies around
Yeah,
the fire.
that I think would show up on the IR.
Yes, because they have like a big bonfire going,
Uh-huh.
being really loud. It's rough.
She, I don't think she's gonna be okay after seeing that.
No. And then we also have our other, our Gen Z people. They've
Yeah.
stealthily hidden Janine's body, but
Well,
Janine
first, before that, I really like the fact. I mean, they started off right in the house. The murders just happened, or the
yeah,
shooting, rather, has just happened. And Steph, like they could have written this character as like a sociopath, but instead, he's having a really hard time with the fact that he just
yeah,
shot Janine.
yeah,
He says, "I shot her." Oh God, I think the subtitles got that one really wrong too, but I don't remember what they wrote. It was something stupid.
yeah.
I surely did it or something. I don't know what he said. So he's having a hard time with it, and then he's also admitting to Kelly that he's got a crush on her in this scene,
Yep,
which I thought was funny.
yep.
And
Sticker
his
moment.
reaction is like, "Oh, you idiot!" And I'm like, "Yeah, all right, buddy, it's okay. Let's just put Janine into a rug." And they throw her into Janine's car. They hotwire her car. Charlie seems to have that skill somehow, and then drive her out to one of these bunkers in the woods, which I will admit, when I lived in England, that was, yeah. Anytime you go for a walk with your dog, you'd run across one of these things. So that's pretty normal to find a World War II machine gun bunker or something just out in the middle of nowhere. And that's where they put Janine's body, and then like they leave her there and go back. We cut to Finn. Finn's gone back to see Morgan, but and this interaction is more of them being on the same page. But there's not a lot to it. It's like it's basically that's what it is. It's they're looking at videos of more of the attacks, and he's telling her to question everything.
Mm,
And now they're and she's like, "Yeah, I get it now," or something. At least they don't insult each other in this scene.
they don't. And then she eventually gets to like, you know, she's interacting with Finn again eventually and has already watched his videos. The weird thing is that Finn is like,
Sorry, I thought we were
sorry,
talking about Finn.
no, sorry. Finn interacts with Steph later
Yeah,
and is trying to use these videos as like evidence. And even though Steph has like clearly seen this and like maybe this is why he finally shares it with her is that she shares these things.
yeah.
He's strangely skeptical of everything. But basically he's got bigger fish to fry because he's too worried about the fact that he shot Janine. And I think that's still impacting
And
him.
he has footage of the dog lady attack.
Right,
Like
right. No,
he,
that's what I'm saying.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
He's trying to process things. I think it's hard for him right
He
now.
still hasn't told Finn. Yeah, he does eventually tell Finn
Yeah.
about the Janine shooting because
Yeah.
they show up at the bunker. But yeah, um, and then there's a scene here of at the hospital. The dog, Jane, the dog lady, is turns, bites a nurse, and then runs out of the hospital, which I thought was again like interesting zombie behavior. Uh, she attacks the nurse because they're holding her down. Basically, she just wants to leave. She wants to go out and be a zombie. So I think this kind of an interesting zombie motivation that they're showing for this show.
Yep.
It's like this real selfish sort of, I just want to just leave me alone. I just want to be myself and not, be constrained by you guys.
Hmm.
It's kind of cool as a as an approach to telling the
Zombie.
zombie story.
I know.
It's super cool to be super selfish and just bite people, everybody.
Yeah.
And now we're at day three. Day three, Steph sees missing dog lady on the news and is like, "Oh, I that was us. We did that." Um, Michael meets the little boy about his drug deal. Such a weird thing.
Hmm.
I'm very interested to see where this goes. Because so he ends up calling London, and London is like, or these drug dealers in London are like, yeah, we're gonna come up there, and they have a little tete-a-tete where Michael is like, as token of my respect, here's 120 pounds and some pocket money, and they're like, no, you just owe us $5,000 by tomorrow. Michael's in a bad spot, but also we don't feel bad about that.
But
We've
again,
already,
I'm still confused about how he even got
yeah.
like tied up with these people in the first
I
place.
think you have to put up the money to get the drugs. So don't feel like maybe this is a scam. Maybe we'll find out.
Yeah. Anyway,
This
um,
is, we also missed I think this happened in episode, well, it's one of these episodes. Where was it that Charlie goes to get Michael out of the pub and ends up getting drunk and then coming home and has to fight? We've talked about the outcome of the fight. We learn about Billy. We learn about his little sister.
can't remember if it was this one. I think it was this second episode that that happens.
But Michael also starts off being like friendly. He's like, "Oh, Charlie, your mom send you like have a pint with me," and then they're there until long after dark. There's also a scene of Michael beating up three people, um, and Charlie coming home with him, and he's drunk and feeling his face like, "Oh, I'm so drunk," and then that's why Karen yells at Michael because he got her he got her son drunk when he just was sent to go bring him home. Anyway, so things are not good for Charlie in any way. At least Michael isn't beating either of them that we've seen
That we know of,
that we
at
know
least. But
of.
there just seems a lot going on there.
It does,
So
yeah, it does. There's a scene at there's a few scenes at the school. In this first one, it's the set is a little bit weird. They have two teachers and a handful of students, and one of the teachers is giving like a briefing. Watch out for agitated elderly people. There's a particularly vicious strain of COVID. How did you like this?
what the strain of COVID where they're kind of
The
misinformationing.
school scenes.
Oh, those were kind of, I mean, again, this is sort of showing how information or misinformation is spread. They're trying to go with the narrative that it's COVID, that it's like a few, what did they say, unstable persons, without telling them really, like, oh, keep an eye out for shady characters and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
And
that
like
was
the
kind of,
gates are locked. I thought that this was like because this comes after Westminster Lady saying we're gonna like spread some stories. We'll have some messaging, and I feel like this is the outcome of that. Is now this is what the teachers have been told to tell the students, and like we're here for your safety. But it's interesting to listen to that, right? I thought that
yeah.
was kind of cool.
Yeah, so that was kind of interesting. And who knows more? Like, it's interesting because obviously Finn and Steph and Kelly and Charlie all know more. Charlie and Kelly make a quick exit, and manage to get out. Steph tries to make a slightly more obvious exit and gets thrown into detention. Um,
And then Finn just shows up there because she wants to be in there,
yeah,
which I thought was funny. And
yeah.
then she keeps making references in this episode to Steph because she and Steph now are like kind of together, like hanging out for the rest
Hmm.
of the episode. And she's constantly telling him things like, "Oh, Breakfast Club," or I forget some of the other references she
Yeah, and
tries to
he's
make.
like, "This isn't landing with me because I
He,
don't understand it."
I've never seen any movies apparently.
Yeah. Um,
Um, Yeah, so those were kind of funny. And she's just showing him, yeah, this is where they start to like share more information in addition. Which kind of all culminates with they decide to go find Jane the dog lady, which they do at her mom's house, perhaps. They like see the mom go into the house, then they go to surveil what is going on in there, and there's a nice little pop-up of the mom being attacked by Jane. Then they decide to go into the house, which I didn't 100% understand this. She's looking for proof to upload to this one website, right? That's
Yeah.
her motivation here. She wants to get something on tape to upload to Red Pillage,
Yep.
which would then blow the doors off of this whole thing. I
Yeah.
feel like she could have just called the cops at this point and been
This
like,
is this is my point. Like
yeah.
this just feels a little too convoluted. And even them going into this house is convoluted and strange and
Well,
like
and after they go into the house, once they're upstairs watching Jane eat her mom's brains,
yes.
she charges them for some unknown reason and then gets blood all over her face, which leads me to think, well, is she Malcolmed, you know?
Yep. I mean, we don't know. And then the interesting thing is that Jane then, like, weirdly, she doesn't realize what she did. She blames it on them. Then she goes and, like, kind of is in a weird, like, she's not dead, but she's in kind of like a comatose stage in this tub.
Yeah. She needs
Um,
to cool down because she talks about I'm burning
yes.
up. Yeah, that was some new behavior we hadn't seen before. Part of me was like, oh, maybe she is dead because only old people can handle this virus.
Maybe, I
But
don't know. We don't know yet what's going on.
yeah,
But then we have the four Gen Z kids all reunited at the place where Janine was.
and she's
And
moved around a couple of times by this point.
yep.
Or has
Uh,
she straight up left by the time they all
I
four of
think,
them
well, I mean,
reunite?
we know she's come back to life because she was interacting with Kelly, and
No,
Kelly
yeah,
was,
she's gone because she shows up at the end of the episode somewhere else, right? So
yeah,
by the
yeah,
time the four of them meet up, they've already Finn and no, Charlie and Kelly have already determined that Janine is not dead. Uh, they pull the crossbow out of her
yeah,
chest.
that's weird. And she is
That
very,
was a weird scene. That's campy. I think you're right. I think,
I think that's what they're going for, but it
yeah.
isn't always successful because their reactions aren't, and maybe that's what it is.
And
But
it's tough to go back and forth.
yeah,
Yeah.
um,
But so Janine is alive. She's talking. She's like, I don't know what happened. I'm so hungry. So they're being at least careful about her. She doesn't seem to be able to get up and move around. They just kind of put a blanket around her. And then when they come back later with a bag of meat that they'd stolen from Michael in the fridge, there's a yeah. She's not there. And then also Steph and Finn show up and they're like, "Oh my God, you told her." And then Finn is covered in in blood. It was
yeah,
good times. Cecily and Frank have been reunited. Frank killed two soldiers who were about to open up on the 15 or however many of them there are, Cecily's group. So he kills those two soldiers, happy reuniting scene, and then shortly afterwards they have another scene where they look insane. Not
yep,
like crazy, but they're suddenly they have black veins all over their.
yeah. They're like, it's progressing, and
I just felt very fast that part.
yeah, it did.
And they have that what are they talking about in this scene? Do you remember? It's they're talking about like feeling conflicted, but then also not at all.
Right. And they want to continue their power and all that stuff. And
Because
somewhere in
Cecily
here,
Cecily says we're monsters,
but they like it.
but Frank, I don't know. Cecily, I think, might still be conflicted about feeling monstrous, but Frank is the one who's like, I don't think that's a problem at all.
Yeah. And yeah.
So maybe they're setting up some sort of trouble in paradise between Frank and Cecily.
Maybe. And then our last little, tidbit of the show is really with the sort of the cliffhanger, which is who's been very hungry, goes to her son's home and takes him out, and uh, Kelly's mom kicks her out of the house and is really upset. So that's going to be
That's one way to put it. Yeah. Kicks Janine, literally kicks Janine
literally.
out of the house, out of the doorway. Dad, however, has been bitten on the neck, bleeding out. That might not end well for Kelly's mom. Certainly isn't ending well for Kelly's dad.
I mean, I'm enjoying the show and I do like some of the writing and I do like the characters and the actors. I like the treatment and sort of unevenness in what it's supposed to be is off-putting for me, but I feel I'm still interested in seeing what happens and I like do some of the underlying commentary is interesting. So I'm game and this isn't that many episodes. I think it's only like 6 episodes total.
Yeah.
So we'll have to continue on. Any other parting thoughts before
No,
we
just to
sign off?
reiterate, like the first episode to me, the pacing felt off. There were some scenes that went nowhere or didn't go far enough, I guess. Second episode was much more compelling for me. So I'm hoping that we continue in that respect.
Yep, agree. So if you had thoughts about this, send us an email, reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. And thank you as always for listening.
Yeah, toodaloo, everybody.